This LOS is distinguished between comparative advantage and absolute advantage. International trade, comparative advantage and the gains from trade. An absolute advantage exists if the country is able to produce a good at a lower cost or use fewer resources. A comparative advantage exists if the company's opportunity cost of producing a good is less than its trading partner. It is possible to have a comparative advantage while not having an absolute advantage in producing a good. The greater the difference between the world price of a good and its autarkic price, the more potential to gain from trade. A country's comparative advantage can change over time. So this is the data from the blue box example in the text. Suppose there are only two countries, India and the United Kingdom. India exports cloth to United Kingdom and imports machinery. The output per worker per day in each country is shown. So we've got the United Kingdom machinery, 4 units per day per worker, and in terms of cloth, 8 yards. For India, we have the output as 2 units per worker per day and 16 yards of cloth. Okay? So we can see the United Kingdom has an absolute advantage in the production of machinery because it produces more machinery per worker per day than India. 4 is greater than 2. That's an absolute advantage. India has an absolute advantage in the production of cloth because it produces more cloth per worker per day than the United Kingdom. 16 yards of cloth versus 8. So in this case, we're looking for the largest number with respect to the category machinery or cloth, and that is the absolute advantage because they produce more per worker per day. Now we're going to move on to the opportunity cost. So recall the absolute advantage, we looked for the largest number. So the United Kingdom had an absolute advantage in terms of machinery because 4 was greater than 2, and India had an absolute advantage in terms of cloth because 16 yards is greater than 8 as the output per worker per day. But now when we move to the opportunity cost of a machine in the United Kingdom is 2 yards of cloth. We take our 8 and we divide it by 4, and that's going to equal our 2. Okay? And so similarly then for India, we're going to take 16 divided by 2, and we're going to have an opportunity cost of 8. Okay? So therefore, you could also look at it in the UK, 1 machine equals 2 yards of cloth, or in India, 1 machine equals 8 yards of cloth. Okay? So therefore, the United Kingdom has a comparative advantage in producing machines. Now, when we look at the opportunity cost of a yard of cloth in the United Kingdom and in India, what do? Well, we just do the fraction the other way. We do 4 divided by 8, that's going to equal 1/2, and we do 2 divided by 16, and that's going to equal 1/8, okay? So you can see here that the opportunity cost of a yard of cloth in the United Kingdom and India is 1/2 and 1/8 of a machine, respectively. Therefore, India has a lower opportunity cost, 1/8 of a machine, and therefore a comparative advantage in the production of cloth. So let's do a couple of practice questions to consolidate our understanding. The first one, a country has a comparative advantage in producing a good if A, it is able to produce the good at a lower cost than its trading partner, B, its opportunity cost of producing the good is less than that of its trading partner, or C, its opportunity cost of producing the good is more than that of its trading partner. I think that question was pretty easy. B is correct. Comparative advantage is present when the opportunity cost of producing a good is less than that of its trading partner. So a country has a comparative advantage in producing a good if its opportunity cost of producing the good is less than that of its trading partner. So let's do a quick practice question again. Suppose 3 countries produce rulers and pencils with output per worker per day in each country as follows. So we've got 3 countries, Mexico, Brazil, and China. And for rulers, Mexico produces 20 per worker per day, Brazil produces 30, and China produces 40. With regards to pencils, Mexico produces 40 pencils per day per worker, Brazil 90, and China 160. So which country has the greatest comparative advantage in the production of rulers? A, China, B, Brazil, or C, Mexico? Okay, this should be an easy question. It's just taking some practice on the mechanics. So when they ask about the opportunity cost on the rulers, the way to remember it is you start in the other category, the pencils, and that becomes the numerator, the other category, and the denominator is your rulers in this case. So 40 divided by 20, that equals 2. 90 divided by 30, that equals 3. And 160 divided by 40 equals 4, okay? So C is correct. Mexico has the greatest comparative advantage in the production of rulers. Mexico has the lowest opportunity cost to produce an extra ruler. The opportunity cost is 2 pencils per ruler in Mexico, 3 pencils per ruler in Brazil, and 4 pencils per ruler in China. So these type of questions just take a little bit of practice, remembering what your numerator and denominator is with regards to calculating the opportunity cost. So when you have 2 columns and they're asking for the opportunity cost of rulers, again, that is your denominator. Your other category is the numerator. And that just takes a little bit of practice. Good question. One last practice question to finish this LOS. Suppose Mexico exports vegetables to Brazil and imports flashlights used for mining from Brazil. The output per worker per day in each country is as follows. So we've got our flashlights and our vegetables. So for Mexico, they produce 20 flashlights per worker per day and 60 vegetables per worker per day. For Brazil, it's 40 flashlights per worker per day and 80 vegetables per worker per day. Which country has a comparative advantage in the production of vegetables, and what is the most relevant opportunity cost? So A, Brazil, 2 vegetables per flashlight. B, Mexico, 1.5 vegetables per flashlight. Or C, Mexico, 1/3 flashlight per vegetable. Okay, this question can be a little bit tricky if you haven't done a little bit of practice. So it's asking 2 things. Which country has a comparative advantage in the production of vegetables, and what is the most relevant opportunity cost, okay? So we're going to look at the opportunity cost with regards to vegetables. So remember, we're going to make the flashlights the numerator and the vegetables the denominator, okay? So 20 divided by 60 flashlights over vegetables gives us 1/3, okay? Or 1 flashlight equals 3 vegetables. Now for Brazil, it's going to be 40 over 80 flashlights over vegetables, which equals 1/2. So 1 flashlight equals 2 vegetables, okay? So actually the 2 vegetables per flashlight in a sense is correct, but that is wrong. A is wrong because Brazil doesn't have the comparative advantage. Mexico has the comparative advantage because 1 flashlight equals 3 vegetables, okay? So the opportunity cost of vegetables is 1/3 per flashlight, okay? And the opportunity cost of vegetables for Brazil is 1/2 per flashlight. So again, this calculation for B is wrong. It's not 1.5 vegetables per flashlight. That should be an easy one. You can see clearly that it's 1 to 3. So C is correct. It's 1/3 of a flashlight per vegetable. So this type of question, just be careful with how you do the math and be careful with a little bit on the wording. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.